Let's talk about the city of Capernaum. I would argue that with the exception of Jerusalem, Capernaum is the most important city in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. Certainly, most things that are written about Christ that happened in any city happened in Capernaum. If we know the location, where it is, and we understand what was going on there geographically and socially, we can really understand some of the things that happened there. Now let's talk about how important Capernaum really was in the ministry of Jesus Christ. Well, it was important enough that when he left Nazareth, he moved both himself and his family to Capernaum and apparently had a home there.
Okay, we are here at Capernaum, which Jesus Christ turned into his hometown after they tried to throw him out of over a cliff at Nazareth. So Jesus came here, eventually brought his family here to Capernaum.
Capernaum was on a major thoroughfare, a major branch of the Via Maris, the main road that ran from Egypt to Damascus. Capernaum was right on a branch of that. Plus it was right by the sea. So there was a lot of money passing through there, a lot of money being made there. So it's obvious you want a tax collector there.
So you had a tax office here, but then if you're going to have taxes, you're going to have a lot of money. So let's have some Roman army that can protect that and can protect this town from incursion more deeply into Judea. So they had a centurion here. We know the centurion had a servant that was sick, that was healed by Jesus Christ. Behind me is a Roman mile marker telling us that the Romans thought this stretch of road was important enough that they actually made mile markers, which the Romans loved to do, so that people knew where they were walking. And this is one of the sites that you can see here at Capernaum, which attests to how important this town really was, not just to Christianity, but to the Roman Empire.
So Capernaum was a happening city. There was a lot of traffic. When we talk about the life and ministry of Jesus Christ, he said he came to call people, to get them to believe. And if there's a lot of people going through the city, then that's going to be easier. It was in Capernaum that Jesus Christ healed the nobleman's son. He cast out demons there. He healed Peter's mother-in-law there, which tells you that Peter had family there, lived there himself part-time. It was there that Jesus Christ taught that he was the bread of life. And it was there in Capernaum where Jesus Christ healed that paralyzed man who was let down through the roof, and he healed the woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years. If we take a look at the extent of Jesus Christ's healing ministry and his miracle ministry, a huge percentage of that happened there in Capernaum.
So Jesus Christ, now he's called in many versions of the Bible a carpenter. You've got to understand that when biblical translations started with John Wycliffe and William Tyndale, they're all Europeans, every one of them. And they're looking at the Greek text, and the Greek text uses the word tectone, that Jesus was a tectone. Now, the word tectone means builder. It doesn't mean carpenter. But if you live in Europe, what do you build with? Wood, exactly. And so Jesus Christ the tectone became Jesus Christ the carpenter. But the fact of the matter is that's just tradition. If Jesus Christ lived in the Galilee at the time of Christ, was there wood around? Sure, there was some wood around, but gee, what's the primary building material? It's stone, exactly. So if Jesus Christ is going to build anything in his time period, at least from a foundational level and a few layers up, he's going to be building out of stone. Capernaum, in a sense, is like a mini museum because they've got a lot of ancient things. One of the ancient things that they have is the commercial millstone. And we're not talking about the millstone that basically every household would own, every wife would have one for turning grain into flour. We're talking about the big commercial stones. They were usually turned by donkeys, not people, because they were so heavy. And the text, when Jesus Christ is talking about people who could be afflicting or misdirecting little children, he says, if you are afflicting these little children, if you're forbidding the little children to get into the kingdom of heaven, then it would be better if you had the millstone, the Greek text, the millstone of a donkey tied around your head and you were thrown into the lake. So I wanted to point out what the millstone of a donkey looked like. And you can see it was a very, very heavy millstone. There's one right in front of me with a bottom and a top. And then there's one just to the right of that, about 15 feet. That's the bottom. It looks kind of like an ice cream cone turned upside down. That's just the bottom part. And way behind it, looking like kind of a bowl with a bottom, is the top part. You put the grain in there, and then there's slots where you could tie the yoke things of the donkey, and the donkey would walk round and round and round. When the Greek text says a millstone turned by a donkey, that's one of those. Okay, this is the synagogue that's currently here at Capernaum. This is not from the time of Christ. This is like a 3rd century synagogue. And it's, as you can see, it's built in limestone. Some of this limestone was discovered here in place, but most of it is a reconstruction, a rebuilding. It's not like they found this building like this, but they reconstructed it from the material that was here. So let's go on inside. And as we see the synagogue on the inside, one of the things that we see are the seats for people around the synagogue. And also at the front, there would have been a seat for the elders. And generally speaking, the men would also sit down in the middle. And in a normal situation like this, and we're not really sure from the ancient witnesses seem to be unclear about this, but they would build a balcony where women would be, and the first floor here would be all for men. Now, at the time of Christ, in the synagogue would almost certainly have been in the same location. But if you remember, the synagogue ruler is specifically named in the Bible. His name is Jairus, and he had a 12-year-old daughter who was sick, and that daughter died. And then Jesus Christ raised that daughter from the dead. And that's one of the great miracles that happened here in Capernaum that was associated with this synagogue. Well, we're in Capernaum, and behind me is the structure that's normally called the House of Peter. Now, we know that this was an important Christian worship site. For one thing, we could tell it started out as a regular house, and then it was enlarged, and we know this from archaeology, and it was enlarged again, and then it was turned into an octagonal structure where more people could sit and worship, and then it was surrounded by an outer wall, and you can tell this was an important Christian worship center. Now, the Christian church in general has said this is the house of Peter, but there's no actual sign that says that. We actually don't know whose house it is. There are several options. One, of course, is Peter. It might be the house of Peter. The Christian church and tradition may be right, but this was Jesus's hometown. There's absolutely no reason that this couldn't actually be the home of Jesus Christ. That maybe after his crucifixion was dedicated to the church, and then it was enlarged and used as a worship center. That would be possible too. Or even possible again is, remember the centurion who had enough money, he actually built a synagogue for the Jews, and then Jesus Christ healed his servant, and it's ostensibly possible that he became a follower of Christ, and Christ was crucified. He might have bought this house and turned it into a worship center. We're not sure who actually owned the house. Peter, Jesus, we're not really sure, but we know this was an important worship center. And we know that this was the hometown of Jesus Christ, and he did many miracles here. So there's a lot of reasons why there would have been a Christian congregation here at Capernaum that used this building behind me as a worship center and remodeled it and enlarged it a number of times.
What does this mean? Well, it means that Capernaum is more than just a popular tourist site, which it is. It's a popular tourist site. But when we go there And when we understand how close it is to the Sea of Galilee, because it's right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and the fact that a major branch of the Via Maris, this huge road, huge traveling road, caravan road, went right through Capernaum, we can understand why Jesus Christ would want to make his home there. By understanding more about Capernaum, we understand more about the ministry and the mission of Jesus Christ.